did you get to the point where he talks about life?
No.
Lou Elizondo?
No.
Oh,
Not even
dude,
there.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's a good point. So then the one person was
I think
asking
I saw
like,
the
"Are
clip
these
of it. Yeah. Like, what does he mean by life? There's different terminologies for that. Yeah.
huge genius?" So like he's like life. We thought it needed oxygen, and then we found out that there's life without oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, "Oh, dude, that I didn't even know that." And then he's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Also photosynthesis, and then there's chemosynthesis, so they don't even need light." So he's like, "We need to figure out our definition of like life." Because the person asking, you'll see it. She asked the craziest question. She's like, "Are these vehicles alive?" And he's like, "Wait, like, what do you mean by that?" You know what I mean? Because like some people think that these vehicles are entities.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no like pilot. It's literally just the vehicle itself is just like alive,
Mm-hmm.
which would be crazy. But okay, with all that, another thing related to spirituality is like there was this painter who was drawing UFOs. Okay, and then it was in the Graham Hancock and Jesse Michaels American Alchemy podcast. If you want to listen to it, he's like, "Why are you painting UFOs?" And he's like, "They're not UFOs. They're vehicles to go between the spirit realm and this realm."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "That's interesting," because science now is saying like interdimensional, like these UFOs could be interdimensional beings. And you're like, is that what they meant about like the spirit world? Like, is there another? No, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like as we progress in technology and in our understanding, like science is like, no, there are like, was it 14 different dimensions for like string theory or something? Like Michio Kaku's like, there's 14 different dimensions stacked on top of each other. And you're like, what the hell does that mean, bro?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are there monsters? Like, what are you doing? Is it like Inuyasha? Do you just jump through a portal and you're like in a whole new world? Like the future is like endless now to me because it's like,
Sure. Yeah.
what does all of this mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What is your take?
No, I agree. I think there's nothing wrong with being like altruistic about what we think of these things mean in the future. But like we again, that's speculating based on what we don't know, right? So this is
Yeah,
just what we do know, and these are theories that we have. But what is truth? We don't know that till we actually find out.
totally. Um, but it makes you think about what the indigenous were saying. Remember, like the spirits in. Do you remember Princess Mononoke, the wolf,
Uh,
the Wolf Girl,
not,
Studio Ghibli?
I know the movie, but I don't remember the movie, the show, or
Okay,
the
okay. So
the
so
story.
so I was reading this indigenous book on my flight to Halifax, and like
Mm.
one of the best ones. I forgot the title though, but it was really good. It was about the Ojibwe ceremonies, and in it they were talking about like beings, like little elves in the forest that they would interact with the um the indigenous people.
Hmm.
And then I was like, oh, Kodama from Princess Mononoke. These little like alien looking creatures. And then what they were saying is actually that's the tattoo I got yesterday, the Kodama. And like it was saying that the trees have these entities within them, and they like if it's a healthy forest, you'll see a bunch of Kodama because they're playing and like living and happy, right? And then if the forest is dying, you wouldn't see those Kodama,
Hmm.
right? But if you look into like Shinto, where like Studio Ghibli got it from, like the Kodama is a Shinto belief system. And then in the Philippines, they believe in elves within trees as well. And I'm like, all right, guys, are there actual elves like in the vicinity?
Hmm.
And like, can you tap into them? One thing Graham was saying is like, sure, there are ships that can go interdimensionally, but we can do that with like psychedelics too.
Hmm.
And remember, like the trees, there's that giant tree in the Philippines in like my dad's old elementary school. And then they're like, oh, it's a demon tree. And you're like, what are you talking about, demon? And like anybody who goes on it or like climbs it, the elves will curse them. And then like there's kids that'll roll
Sure.
around, they'll have like psychotic breaks and stuff. And then as we're going, my uncle was like, there's a demon tree. I'm like, oh, what kind of tree is that? Because there's one, like, it'll be interesting. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it's an acacia tree. And you're like, oh, acacia is high in DMT. Okay, I see what's going on here.
Right.
So it's like, are they just tripping? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah,
And then
that could be the case, right?
exactly, it's like a logical scientific thing. explaining some phenomenon. And that's what I mean. Like science
Mm.
is catching up to like these ancient texts where you're like, oh, it's like a demon. You're like, no, it's actually just a chemical in your brain,
Mhm.
bro. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Or like another one that I heard is like when you go into um this tomb of this guy, I forgot the specific tomb. Graham Hancock was again talking about it. He was like, yeah, if you go into the Khufu's tomb or something, people will die. And you're like, oh, it's cursed, it's haunted,
Mhm.
right? And then when they brought scientists there, it's like, oh, it's high in uranium.
Right.
So they're dying because of this uranium.
Right.
But see, it's like science is like explaining these things
Sure.
now. So it's like science is catching up to spirituality. Or like the other one was the Holy Grail. So if you listen to um, what's the name? Forbidden Knowledge, he was saying that the Holy Grail is actually a nuclear reactor. So nuclear fusion is like one of the most powerful energy resources we have, right? Like the atom bomb kind of thing. And like we like that's the I don't know, like one of the highest sources of power. And he was saying that that's what could have been powering the the pyramid.
Mhm.
Okay. And just go with me on this. Sounds crazy. So like within the pyramid, and me and Tara have been inside the pyramid when they're like, oh, if you go in, it's like a coffin, right? And then what Forbidden Knowledge was saying is like it's not a coffin, it's the place where you put the nuclear reactor. And if you look into the lore of it, that nuclear reactor is the Holy Grail. Okay. Because it's so tiny. It's like you couldn't fit, unless they were like really tiny people, like you couldn't really fit in there. Right. So, one thing in the ancient text is saying is that um, you'll go blind, you'll get a sickness if you're around the Holy Grail. You have to hold it with like special gloves,
Mhm.
right? And it fits all of the hallmarks of nuclear fission. These people are like looking at a fusion like reactor thing. They're going blind. They're getting cancers all over their body because that's what radiation. It's radiation poisoning, bro.
Mhm.
Right? And allegedly they have this in oh, I forgot. It's some African country. That's where he started his whole career. Graham Hancock. He was like doing journalism in this African country and they're like Kenya or something. And they're like, "Oh, we have the Holy Grail." And then
Right.
he's like, "What are you guys talking about?" So he went there and they're like, "You can't go inside." But everyone that was guarding it, like when it's your time to guard the Holy Grail, you die after 3 years and you go blind as you're doing it, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, "This sounds like radiation,
Mhm.
you know?"
Right.
And it's like, if it turns out it's that, it's like we've just explained with science what you only talked about spiritually, which
Mhm.
is like, oh, it's this holy thing we can't touch, or you'll still die. You know what I mean? It's like all of this is starting to click
Yeah.
as we move
Right.
towards like better and better science.
Mhm.
Okay, with our last 7 minutes, I really think that we're on the cusp of an entirely new way of living. And cat's out of the bag, especially after reading the Immaculate Constellation thing.
Mhm. Oh,
Oh, whoa.
that's weird.
That was weird. Look at this
Fireworks.
crazy. Yeah. I think it's like hand signs they're saying.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if
yeah, yeah. Well, can you not turn
that's
that
right.
off? I guess.
I have no idea. Anyways.
Sure.
Wow, they're just trying to silence us right now as we talk about Immaculate Constellation. How weird was that the timing as I said the code word? Like kind of anyways. So Immaculate Constellation, with that paper, and then when you read the paper, it's like, okay, we've basically reverse engineered down crafts or crafts that we found in the ground,
Mhm.
right? Oh, remember Bob Lazar was like, we found some of these crafts underground. It's like during archaeological digs, and the Emerald Tablet said that there's a spaceship underneath the Sphinx. It's
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
okay, this is making sense, guys. Like that they're buried here or whatever. But if if we, I mean, no, it's not if we have found that we are reverse engineering these crafts. And the key point of all of this is they've cracked anti-gravity. If you look at American Alchemy, he has so many videos about anti-gravity. And like there was this Chinese scientist that came to America to like work on it, and then she got like silenced. Like they don't know where she is anymore. Like all these people were on the verge of cracking anti-gravity. Like the Nazis were on the verge of it. It's like, did they crack it? And they're just hiding this beyond black technology. And if it gets released to the public, it will completely disrupt our economic system. that's what Stephen Greer was saying.
Mhm.
And after seeing the hearing and reading the paper, I'm like, that's the only thing that makes sense. We're about to get crazy technology, but there's an unfair competitive advantage because everyone, like all these companies knew about it and they didn't let anyone know. So like people like Elon Musk, he's like solar and wind. And it's like, we've actually got the cleanest energy, which is 0 point. So now you're wasting your time and your resources and like, you know,
Mhm.
so people are going to be sued. I think that's like the big thing that's about to happen is like companies are going to get crazy sued. But at the end of it, I think we're going to get a whole different like cyberpunk world. What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be great if that's the case.
It
Yeah.
it makes sense, right? Like there's no way we're going down. Like they
No,
can't,
no, no, no.
you know. I mean, the one world government kind of thing and like the totalitarian thing like after hearing what's happening in China with like the technology, like that's a little freaky, but like I really do think okay, if you have an anti-gravity craft and it's been written in Congress, we have it on paper, you guys have it. Now the next step, the next hearing is going to be, okay, we're going to pull these people from Lockheed Martin, General Electric, all these people, we're going to put them in front of Congress. All right, what do you know? And if they're like, yeah, we have anti-gravity craft. Okay, the next step is how do we harness that for the good of humanity?